Hello, this is Dr. Paul Cottrell, and I'm recording on August 17th. So please, if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to all my channels. It's going to be really important because something big is happening and you need to pay attention. So make sure you subscribe to my 4 channels on YouTube because I'm sure that what I'm going to be saying, I'm going to be getting strikes. Follow me on Rumble, Bitchute, and Brighteon. Make sure you follow me on X and GETTR so you can get notifications if things start to get curtailed in terms of censorship, so you can get informed. In addition, make sure that you're following me on Patreon. If you can, please be a paid member. Another way to do it to help support my work, because I have thousands of videos for free, and it's through your donations. You can help support my work by donating on my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com. And on my website, on the homepage at the very bottom, you can donate through Stripe, PayPal, or buy me a coffee. All the links are in the description of this video. So please click the links, subscribe, make sure you get the notifications, and make sure you follow me on X, GETTR, and Facebook to get around the censorship. I don't want to create too much panic, but I think that there is complacence in the United States, and I'm concerned. Probably also there's complacency in Europe. So even my viewers in Europe and around the world, I have actually a lot of people that follow me around the world. So just pay attention to what I'm saying, all right? I don't want to create panic, but you have to be concerned. Now, all you got to do is look back at when you were a kid, all right, and how easy it was to get chickenpox when it started to spread in your school. Usually in the United States, it spreads in some sort of contact with a kid, in the school system, and eventually it spreads, and then they take it home, and then, other siblings get it, and that's how it spreads. Chickenpox is a lower form of the pox virus. All right. Smallpox is on the other side of the spectrum where it's severe. Mpox is in the middle. All right. So I want you to zoom out and look at the full context. Look at the spectrum. Chickenpox, pox virus, easy to spread. Yes, it can be problematic for some people, but for most people, it's basically a passage through adolescence, right? Right. But smallpox can be extremely problematic. And all you got to do is just research the history of these different outbreaks that were happening around the world at different time periods and how smallpox was a major problem. All right. Then there is mpox. Mpox is in the middle in terms of severity, assuming that there's no additional gain of function that was plugged into it. Okay, just the natural monkeypox kind of virus. All right, it's in the middle. It's worse than chickenpox, not as bad as smallpox. Assuming, and it's a big assumption here, assuming there wasn't gain of function. And we don't know if that didn't take place or if it did take place. But just the wild type version, it's in the middle between smallpox and chickenpox. So you have to go back in time and remember how fast it was, how easy it was to get chickenpox. That means bedding. That means bedding can spread it. That means clothing can spread it. That means just, rubbing contact, with children, when they're playing, I would say outside or, playing sports or whatever. Then there's the sexual contact. The point here is it's easy to spread. Now, it's not a typical respiratory kind of thing where, it's airborne, what we'll call airborne. But you can spread it through droplets. So that means that if someone has it and they sneezed, and you happen to be close enough to get those droplets, and those droplets had viral particles, virons, then you could get it. All right. So keep that in mind. All right. All right, now step back, and we got to think about this. The chicken pox individuals that contracted chicken pox when they were younger do not have cross reactivity to fight mpox. Okay. There were people around the world that were getting smallpox vaccinations into the early 70s. So there are some people that have memory cells that might be able to able to have cross reactivity to mpox. The problem comes in is that stopped in these countries in around 1972, 1975, somewhere in there, depending on the country. Okay, with their mass program to try to eradicate smallpox. That means the memory cells for these individuals have either died off or they're in such small populations that their immune system might not react fast enough. That means that the protection for mpox, or even smallpox for that matter, is very extremely low, even for the ones that did get a vaccine back in the 70s. All right. Now there's baby boomers that had some, and it's the same problem. The memory cells are either died off or they're in such low concentrations that you may not have an immune you may not have immunity to smallpox or mpox, because smallpox antibodies are cross reactive for mpox. Okay. Vaccine makers, all right, have been working on building a vaccine for mpox specific. They've also been using vaccines that were targeted for smallpox. All right. So there's new development now that's going on, especially with Moderna with the messenger RNA. It's in clinical trial 1. If this gets really crazy, it's going to go into an emergency mode, and we're going to have all the same problems that we went through in 2020. All right, in terms of efficacy and safety and all that, right? The current supply for vaccinations for smallpox is extremely low. We don't have enough supply. There's not enough supply to it. And the way it's made, it takes a long time to make, and it's expensive. All right. So even if a society was going to try to use that as some sort of protective bubble, it's going to take a while to ramp up. All right. So there's that problem. So you don't have cross reactivity. The ones that were vaccinated for smallpox no longer have memory cells, or the memory cells are so weak in concentration that your immune system won't respond to mpox or smallpox. All right. Keep that in mind. All right. And then there's the development specific to mpox with some of these new pharmaceutical companies that are working on it, like Moderna and I think it's Bavarin, I think it's called. All right. Now, my understanding is, and I had to research this again, but if I remember right from 2 years ago when I looked into this, I believe that the smallpox vaccination is actually a cowpox. It's actually cowpox. All right. To treat smallpox, and then cowpox vaccination would also help to have cross reactivity with mpox. I think that's how it works, but I had to double check. But the new development is specific to mpox. All right. And that's going through all these different proteins that I mentioned on 2 videos, on video episode 35 and episode 36. So the big takeaway here is that if you were vaccinated for smallpox, chances are, because it was so long ago in developed countries, that you no longer have immunity. That means that you don't have cross-reactivity for mpox, and mpox can spread just like chickenpox. All right, and most people have been exposed to chickenpox, but the thing is that mpox is in the middle. Chickenpox is somewhat benign. It can be problematic for certain people, but it's basically benign. But you hate it when you get it. Mpox is closer to smallpox in terms of mortality and severity and all this. Mpox is a problem. It's stop thinking that mpox is like chickenpox. It's not, but it will spread like chickenpox. That's the key here. It's worse than chickenpox. It will spread like chickenpox, and mpox is less severe than smallpox. So it's not in the middle. It's a little bit more biased to smallpox, but it's a problem. All right. If you get mpox, that doesn't mean a guaranteed death, but it's higher mortality rate and the severity. Now, we live in a very superficial society. All right. With COVID, that was respiratory. Yes, there were some dermatological manifestations of it for some cases, but in general, it was just a respiratory infection. All right. Now there's nuances to that. There's, ARDS and non-ARDS and the clotting and blah, 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 blah. Right. And then all the manifestations of different organ problems. But it's a respiratory infection in general. Why? Because it's beta coronaviruses are respiratory, right? Pox viruses are not respiratory infections, and they'll manifest. The manifestation of it is going to be on the skin. So we have a very superficial society. Most people that will get mpox will have scarring, and that scarring is going to be on the face and all over the body. The reason why it's all over the body is because it's shutting down the CD4 positive and the CD8 positive cells and not allowing for activation. So when you have an infected cell by mpox, it shuts off the cognated aspect of the CD4 activation and the CD8 activation to try to kill off the cell. That's why it starts spreading on the body. Then it gets to a point that it's so severe on the body that then there is your body's immune system kicks in. So this inactivation of the CD4, CD8s is local. It's not systemic, it's local. So the body kind of doesn't know that it's being infected. Kind of has a mechanism that the mpox mechanism is in such a way it kind of tricks the body saying you're not infected, even though it is infected locally, because it shuts down the systemic immune system. All right. So what that basically means is that it has to spread more for the body to say, oh, I'm infected. And then the immune system kicks in. And that's why it starts to, for the ones that survive it, that's why it goes away. All right. So you really need to pay attention to what I'm saying. It is big if it starts to spread in the United States or in Europe, and it hasn't yet, but if it does, it's going to be problematic. One, you're going to have people that are going to be fearful because of the scarring. People are going to start to be getting educated on how easy it is, especially in high density areas. Because if you look back in time, how did smallpox and these different other pox viruses spread? It was in populated areas. So populated areas are going to be a problem. That means like LA, New York, Berlin, Paris, London. The proof is in the pudding. All you got to do is just look a couple hundred years and just when these outbreaks were happening with smallpox. The same kind of mechanism, same kind of dynamic, epi curve. So you got to really pay attention. If an outbreak does happen in developed nations, we do not have cross-reactivity for antibodies in most of the population. So what is available for trying to curtail the outbreak, there's not enough vaccines. So what's going to happen is Moderna will be given emergency provision, and they're going to ramp up really quick because it's very easy to make a messenger RNA. Doesn't mean it's safe, but it's really easy to make. And so what's going to happen is that then you're going to have more vials developed by Moderna. If it spreads in the developed nations. The question is, will it? And I personally think that it's going to. Why? Because the spread is just like chickenpox. All right, with that, I'm going to play some videos. I'm also going to do another video that's going to go into the details, looking at one of my medical books, specifically to pox viruses and mpox. All right, but I'm going to have to do that in a different video, and it's going to be, showing my screen, or maybe I might do it on a whiteboard. I'm not sure. So it's going to be a different type of video. But the thing is that you got to get educated on this, because this is a problem. If the outbreaks that are happening in the Congo happen in Europe or in the United States, it's a major problem. It's a major problem. So with that, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. And it's really important to pay attention to the protocol. All right. Now there's benefits of the protocol. It boosts up your immune system and slows down the aging process. But it also, because it's boosting up your immune system, you're having a better chance of not being severely affected. All right. What's the protocol? Structural nanosilvers, liquids and gels, bring down inflammation, and so you can boost up your immune system and take strong antioxidants. That's the core. All right. But there is no silver bullet. There's no magic thing that's going to prevent you from getting this. If you are exposed, you got a problem. So that's why it's so important to just boost up your immune system and be as precautious as possible. In the United States and in Europe, it's not a problem yet. And hopefully it doesn't become a problem. But if it does take hold and it spreads, it's going to burn through fast. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. All right, let's play this video here.
Sometimes Taylor would look at us and wave to us.
Taylor Swift's Wembley love story, and there's more to come. But first, Sweden confirmed on Thursday discovery of Europe's first case of a contagious new variant of mpox called Clade 1. The World Health Organization has declared the virus a global health emergency for the second time in 2 years, following an outbreak in the Democratic Republic of the Congo that has spread to other countries. Mpox causes painful skin lesions. It can be fatal to people with weakened immune systems. However, the NHS says symptoms usually clear up in a few weeks. UK health chiefs say the risk to this country is low, but they are making contingency plans.
But if you're older and you get it, you could be having other issues with your systems, different organs, maybe even become sterile, or facially scarred. You might get scarred depending on how much of the pox you have.
To discover more, we're joined by Evening Standard health reporter Daniel Keane. Dan, what is the WHO's global health emergency on mpox?
The global health emergency is a status which is given by the World Health Organization to what they call extraordinary events. So these are things that pose a really big public health risk through the international spread of disease. And what it does is it triggers a kind of coordinated response internationally to mobilize resources, so getting vaccines, getting testing up and running to curb the spread. I think one of the key things to note is the WHO, while this is an emergency, hasn't declared it a pandemic as they have with previous viruses. What these measures are designed to do is prevent it from becoming a pandemic. So it's kind of proactively getting ahead of the spread of the disease. And I think particularly if you look at where this disease is spreading and the lack of healthcare infrastructure in Central Africa, that's a really important thing to do.
What's the current UK planning?
They're trying to kind of get ahead, making sure we've got enough vaccines for a potential outbreak, making sure we're monitoring people that have travelled from affected regions in Africa, and just getting the message out to the public that this virus is back. I don't think they're concerned. I think the message that they put out yesterday essentially said that the risk to the UK currently is low, but they're trying to strike that fine balance between getting information.
The concern is it's a warning, all right? It's not DEFCON 1 yet, but the moment that it starts to spread in the United States or in Europe, it's DEFCON 1. So getting to like DEFCON 4 to DEFCON 1, it's not going to be incremental. It's going to be a fast move on top of all the instability in the world militarily. Now, do you understand why this is such a problem? With the war in Ukraine, with the wars that are going on in the Middle East, and the potential war with Taiwan. If you're President Xi and you quietly start stocking up on vaccines for smallpox and mpox, and you inoculate your military, and then all of a sudden you start having a ramp up of an infection where the United States doesn't have a stockpile, and now the military forces are weak, the citizens are weak. Don't you think that President Xi will take the opportunity to take Taiwan on top of the Navy being undershipped, overshipped, because the number of ships that we have is less than the number of ships that the Chinese have. Now, there's another dynamic there where the United States has certain types of technology to knock out ships that are AI drone and, air to water, torpedo type stuff, weapons systems, LRAM, or I think it's called, or whatever it is. But the thing is that the United States has been developing systems where maybe we don't need as many ships to knock out China, which is a possibility. But the point here is that if you have a weakened Navy, either because of just being outgunned or because of a sickness, don't you think your enemies are going to take advantage of that?
Out there, and also telling people not to panic.
What do we know about lessons on contingency planning from COVID?
COVID and mpox are two completely different viruses.
No kidding.
Mpox doesn't transmit as easily as COVID. COVID was quite an unusual virus in many senses because it was airborne, and it was also able to transmit asymptomatically, which meant that it spread like wildfire. There was a lot of kind of ingredients that made COVID a very tricky.
Respiratory infections are different than pox infections, but societies fell because of pox infections. The historical data proves this. So don't try to minimize the potentiality of pox infections in societies.
Disease, both to track and to contain. Mpox, by contrast, is only spread through close contact. So it's, more difficult to infect someone that way. But that doesn't mean it's necessarily straightforward to contain. There is significant spread. We learned today that it has reached Sweden.
Anyone that has had chickenpox knows exactly how it spreads. In the school system, on the playing field, within the family, especially if you have siblings. It goes really fast. It happens quick. But mpox is a lot more severe than chickenpox, but the mechanism of spread is the same. So we understand, because most people have been exposed to chickenpox. So we understand the mechanism, but chickenpox is not the antibodies for chickenpox are not cross-reactive for mpox.
And it will likely soon turn up in the UK, that this strain. I think there is definitely lessons that have been learned in terms of moving quickly and responding to these incidents with the kind of necessary urgency. I think COVID has also really got the population more interested in viruses and in preventing the spread of viruses. I think there's a public awareness, perhaps, that there didn't used to be of how badly these things can become. But there are also other lessons which I think it will take many years for us to learn, and that's in terms of the equitable distribution of vaccines across the world, making sure richer countries aren't stockpiling them. I think there are still issues around that.
What do we know about UK vaccine stocks and current guidance on any suspected mpox transmission?
We don't know precisely what the stocks look like at the moment, but the UK HSA is confident that there is enough vaccine to go around if this does become an issue in the UK. But it's worth noting that a couple of years ago, the stock of vaccines became a massive problem in the UK. And actually, we had some of the biggest caseloads worldwide, and there were warnings that we'd run out potentially in 10 days. It's really useful to plan ahead with these sorts of things, and hopefully they'll be doing that right now. In terms of good practice, some of the guidance last time actually urged.
So some people would ask, why is chickenpox different than mpox or smallpox? Because chickenpox, even though the manifestation is like a pox virus, it's a herpes virus. So it's different. So chickenpox is a type of herpes virus. So that's the reason. There's no cross-reactivity. But our memory of getting chickenpox is going to be similar. That whole dynamic of how it spreads in the society, it's similar. Mpox is much worse than chickenpox. Mpox is not as bad as smallpox. All right. But it's really important that chickenpox is a different virus. It's not a pox virus. It has pox, on your skin, right? You have these lesions on your skin that's like a pox virus, but it's really herpes virus. Mpox is a pox virus, all right? And pox viruses are very complex.
With mpox or a contact of someone with mpox to isolate for 21 days. That's obviously a very difficult thing to do, but that is the advice. Otherwise, it's about avoiding close contact with other people. Don't share towels or bedding. Make sure you call your GP and let them know. And definitely speak to the relevant health authorities if you've had contact with someone that's come from an affected region in Central Africa.
Let's go for the ads. Coming up, hundreds of thousands of fans flock to see Taylor Swift at Wembley Stadium, including the...
All right, please go to my store, bud-studio-reykjavik.com. It's important to boost up your immune system. All right. So a great way to do that is to use structural nanosilver products. I have several types. So I have liquids. This is a 30 ppm. You basically swish it in your mouth and take a teaspoon of it a day. Swish it in your mouth, gargle with it, about 20 seconds, 30 seconds, swallow it. You're maintaining the mucosal barrier, all right? And you're also neutralizing pathogens, all right? This is a 30 ppm. I also have it in a 35 ppm. This is max 35. And I also have max 14, which is a 14 ppm. You use it the same way, all right? If you're not feeling well, take a tablespoon or two a day. All right. If you haven't already, get the applicator set so you can put the liquid in the nasal spray, the dropper, or the spritzer. The spritzer is really great to clean surfaces, also to spray the back of your throat. All right. The dropper, you can put it in your drop it in your throat, or the nasal spray to make sure you're neutralizing particles that are in your nasal cavity. So please get the applicator set if you haven't done already. Really important. You gotta pay attention to me. Pay attention to me. Sit down, shut up, and just pay attention. Surface contact is how certain things get spread. So it's really important to get structural nanosilver gel. Put it on your skin. It stays active for 5 hours. It'll neutralize pathogens. On top of it, it actually creates a barrier. So because it's, you know, it's a gel and it creates a barrier on your skin. So please go to my store, get the structural nanosilver gel, put it on your body, put it on your hands, put it around your face. You can put it around your mouth and your nose and around your ears and around your eyes. You can't do that with Perel. Perel just evaporates because it's alcohol based and it cracks your skin and makes it worse, makes your skin worse. Creates it weakens the barrier because your skin's supposed to be a barrier, right? You use Perel all the time, you'll crack your skin. So that means that you have an entry point. So the best thing you can use is a structural nanosilver. Why? Structural nanosilver gel. Why? Because it's creating a barrier. It heals your skin, so it's improving the barrier. So it's creating a barrier. It's improving your natural barrier, your skin, because it's healing the skin. And on top of it, it neutralizes pathogens. And you can put it around your mouth and around your nose and lightly coat your nostrils. You can't do that with Perel. So go to my store, bud-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the structural nanosilver gel. Use this every fucking day. God. I also have it in a dispenser form. All right. You use it the same way. It's easy to carry in your bag. But all right. If you have a cut, if you have an abrasion, if you have a minor burn, use the structural nanosilver gel and it'll help to heal the wound. All right. And it also can be used as a skincare in terms of, you know, just improving the health of the skin and tightening the skin, especially on your face. The way you use it for skincare is you put it on at night and you exfoliate in the morning, and you'll notice that your skin is improving. But in terms of if you have an outbreak in your area, use the structural nanosilver gel every day. Go to my store, bud-studio-reykjavik.com, and I have really nice, really high quality soaps. All right, different varieties, structural nanosilver. This one happens to be in charcoal tea tree, but I have a bunch of other varieties. Go to the store and get a couple bars for your household. You know, you might as well, you know, take a nice shower before the end of the world.
Why do couples choose a Sleep Number Climate 360 smart bed?
Can it keep me warm when I'm cold?
Wait, no, I'm always hot.
Sleep Number does that. The Climate 360 smart bed lets you adjust up to 30 degrees cooler to warmer.
Can I make my side softer?
I think my side.
The European Union's health agency has warned that additional cases of a new mpox variant are likely to be found in Europe in the coming days after Sweden confirmed the first infection outside Africa. Officials say the patient had been infected while staying in an area experiencing a major outbreak. On Wednesday, the World Health Organization declared a global public health emergency following an outbreak in the Democratic Republic of Congo that had spread to neighboring countries. But both the WHO and the International Federation of the Red Cross are recommending that countries do not close their borders.
And from the IFRC side, we do stand with what is recommended under international health regulations, which is that there's no need to close borders when we are in disease outbreaks. Diseases don't recognize borders. People will continue to cross the border, whether it is a legal crossing or not an illegal crossing. It doesn't stop a disease from spreading.
For more on this, I'd like to bring in Dr. William Schaffner, professor of medicine in the Division of Infectious Diseases at Vanderbilt University. Welcome. It's nice to see you. To start off, for those watching from home, how worried should people be about this outbreak?
Well, I think at the moment there's.
Before we hear from him, Dr. Paul Cottrell says, don't be over concerned, but be prepared. Because if it does start an outbreak in your area, you have a problem.
to worry. This is something we in public health and infectious diseases are keeping a careful eye on. We're trying to help the people in the Democratic Republic of Congo deal with this by getting them some vaccine, providing them resources so they can track these infections more carefully. I think there will be more importations, if you will, of this disease from travelers to the Congo and from the Congo and surrounding countries to other countries in Europe, the United States, Canada, and perhaps other parts of the world. But at the moment, this is not a big issue.
And we know that people travel from Europe, Asia, even Africa to get into South America or Central America to go up through the porous border into the United States. How do we know that some of these people don't have mpox? We don't know. We don't know.
They've said there's been only one importation so far to Sweden.
Now, do current vaccines against mpox work against this new variant? You said that there should be or is an effort that's ongoing to bring those to the DRC.
Yes, current vaccines against mpox do work against this more contagious and more severe strain. The difficulty is there's only one manufacturer, and it's working overtime to produce vaccine. So it will take some time for vaccine to have an impact.
Now, in 2022, many will remember the WHO also declared a public health emergency over an outbreak of
And
mpox.
another dynamic that he's not bringing up is that that pox viruses, especially mpox, shuts down or blocks the activation of the CD4, CD8s that are trying to kill off the infected cells. That means if you have a weakened immune system, it's even worse. So we just came out of a major problem in 2020, and what I call the aftershock with a weakened immune system for various reasons, inoculations and through natural infection, and/or through natural infection. And there are many people in society that have a weakened immune system on top of a new type of virus that's coming into your population, aka mpox, where it shuts down your CD4s. Now, do you understand why it's such a fucking problem? These doctors are fucking idiots.
It is different this time around.
There's several different things. First is there are two different strains of mpox. That was the milder strain. This one is even more contagious, and it's potentially more severe. It does have a fatality rate of 1 to 2%, particularly among people who were immune compromised.
So clade 1B, which is where we're all worried about now, happens to emerge right during a major general election in the United States, where one of the candidates really wants to take on the deep state. Makes you wonder. I am starting to think that there was an enhancement that took place in the laboratory. I can't prove it, but that's my working hypothesis.
Older and frail, but it is a more contagious, more easily spread strain than was the other.
Now, when you say contagious, is part of the concern the way in which it spreads?
Well, it is spread through close personal contact, often intimate and sexual contact. But sexual contact seems not to be necessary for the spread of this more contagious strain, just close personal contact. And so that makes it explain why there have been so many cases in DRC.
Doc,
So from a public health
Doc, it's real simple. So people understand it's going to spread like chickenpox.
perspective here, what kind of response would you recommend that governments take in order to help those in the DRC and internationally?
Well, first of all, I think we just have to be mindful, educate people who are traveling to and from the DRC and surrounding countries that they take care not to be infected, certainly not to get involved in intimate contact with local people. The other thing is we have to join together with the World Health Organization to give resources, financial, expertise, vaccine, and the like, so that the Ministry of Health and DRC has a better chance of beginning to control this outbreak.
Well, thank you so much for your time and sharing your insights with us on DW. That is Dr. William Schaffner with Vanderbilt University.
My pleasure.
Let's get the view from Brussels with our correspondent there, Jack Herrick. Jack, what else can you tell us about the spread of this virus?
Well, it appears.
Yo, those are nice. Hold on one second.
Candace, what's up? I think my daughter's going pro in basketball. Wait, you're a dick. Could you pick up an agility ladder for my daughter?
Well, it appears to be going much faster, and that's why so many international organizations are raising concerns and looking into exactly what should be done in this instance. It's obviously shifted now, with most of the cases of this new clade 1 strain being reported in Africa, predominantly in the Democratic Republic of Congo, where 96% of cases have been registered. Now, it's different to when the mpox virus had an outbreak across 70 countries around the world. It was mainly thought to be spread through sexual contact and mainly through the gay male community. Now it's very different, and that's what's raising concerns as well. 70% of the cases in the Democratic Republic of Congo are in children under 15, and they make up 85% of the deaths. And now, in addition to that, what's more concerning for health officials,
I think what is happening, further investigation, but my gut feeling is that the fusion mechanism is more enhanced.
The outbreak, only 1% of cases resulted in death. There were these horrible, pussy rashes that were coming up on people's bodies, but to a large extent, people were recovering from it. In this instance, this year, 14,000 cases have been registered, and there have been 524 deaths, and as I said, mainly among young children. And that's why this new outbreak of mpox is raising concerns. A lot of health officials are saying there's a number of reasons for that. Firstly, the cases are more prevalent in countries where people are poorer and have less access to health, and that the health systems in those countries are inundated, but also because this strain is more infectious, and that it's not only through sexual contact potentially, but also through any time there's broken skin contact between two people.
So plenty here to make officials sit up and take note. How are European health authorities preparing to deal with this?
Yeah, so we heard from the European Centre for Disease Prevention and Control. They sort of echoed what we heard from the World Health Organization and from the International Red Cross, saying that they don't think that travel and borders should be closed in any sense, but that they want to register and record people that are traveling back from places where there are high levels of infections. That first case that was registered in Sweden was someone who had traveled to the affected area in Africa. They said that we must be prepared for all imported cases, and they raised the risk level from low to moderate. It's clear that they're trying to keep everyone calm, that all of these health authorities are working together to do that, but to make sure that they're on top of this outbreak.
Jack Parrott for us in Brussels. Thank you so much, as always.
Before we do that, there's going to be a common theme. You need to focus on the pillars, boost up your immune system, neutralize pathogens, soak up those free radicals, and bring down that inflammatory response, and take other things that will help to boost up the immune system. Something that helps with your immune system is taking magnesium and zinc. You should be taking this every day. If you're not feeling well, take a double dose. Omega-3, really important to have a good lipid profile. If you have a bad lipid profile, you start to have more inflammation cardiovascularly. All right, if you have more inflammation cardiovascularly, you know what? That's a bad thing, not only for your arteries, but for your immune system. So you know what? Take omega-3. What it'll do is it'll bring down the LDL, it'll bring up your HDL levels, and it will help to prevent the stickiness of your red blood cells. So you need to have a good cardiovascular system, right? You don't want it inflamed, because the buildup of plaque is because of oxidizing LDL, right? And how's that oxidizing taking place? You have lots of LDL in your body, and you have free radicals that are going on. So you want to bring that down. So great idea is to take omega-3. So go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. To bring down inflammation, take these two products, all right? Turmeric is an antioxidant, so it's going to soak up those free radicals, but it also brings down those pro-inflammatory cytokines to prevent that chronic inflammatory response in your body. So you're boosting up your immune system. So if something does happen in your community, your immune system is more robust. Ashwagandha root, really important, controls blood glucose levels. And by controlling the blood glucose levels, it's going to reduce that inflammatory response in the vascular system. All right, so these are really important. Olive leaf extract. Get this. Sit down, write this down. Get the olive leaf extract. All right. Why? Because it's going to boost up your immune system, and it's going to help with the cardiovascular system. You're starting to notice a pattern here. All right. It's really important. How does it work? It brings down that inflammation. So it's boosting up your immune system. All right. It's also bringing down the LDL, and it's bringing up the HDL levels. Okay. So it's synergistic with the other things that I've been saying. So stack it. So go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the olive leaf extract. Boosting up your immune system and neutralizing pathogens and reducing the free radicals is a key to making sure that you are ready.
For the World Health Organization, he joins us from Geneva. Tarek, we heard that closing borders does apparently not stop a disease from spreading. But can you explain why it wouldn't limit the rate of infection, especially if proper checks are being made?
Well, as we have heard from the colleague from IFRC, and we know from the experience that we have experienced from COVID-19 that really closing borders is not going to stop the virus. And this is a different virus from, let's say, COVID-19, because this virus is being transmitted through very close skin-to-skin contact. It can also be acquired by contacting an infected animal or through infected surfaces, but it's really primarily transmitted.
And bedding and washing clothes and everything else. So let's say you're in an environment where someone's traveling and they're at a hotel, and the maid comes in and picks up an infected bed sheets from someone that is just starting with their mpox, just started. It's potential that it goes to the maid, and she doesn't start feeling bad until 3 days later, after she's, fed the kids and took the MTA. Big problem in a high density area. Now you understand why pox viruses in high density areas led to the fall of certain empires. Now, of course, that was during times when we didn't have modern medicine. But the point that I'm making is that it's going to be problematic for the society. And many people's immune systems are trashed.
To skin contact, and it's not an airborne virus as COVID-19 was. So we just need to make sure that we know who is infected and make sure that this person does not infect people around. And this is why we have called for increased vigilance, to be on alert for any possible cases, to have testing ready, to test people when we have suspicion, to look out for symptoms of mpox, and once, if there is a case being identified, to make sure that the person gets necessary clinical care, and to make sure that this person is not infecting people around.
Now, 2 years ago, the WHO also declared a public health emergency over an outbreak of mpox. In which way is this one different?
Well, broadly, there are two clades of mpox, clade 1 and clade 2. Global outbreak that happened 22-23 was driven by clade 2, that is less severe, and that was primarily being transmitted through a sexual route. Then the cases, number of cases dropped down, and we lifted the emergency. Here we are talking about clade 1.
That's why I think my working hypothesis is that the clade 2B, which was in 2022, clade 2B had a weaker, most likely a weaker fusion protein. And that's why it had to be a little bit more related to sexual transmission. All right. Now, with clade 1B, I think that the fusion protein is actually enhanced compared to clade 1A.
Creating in Africa, in DR Congo previous years, but the scale of the outbreak this year is unprecedented. And in addition to that, there is a new substrain of clade 1 that seems to be spreading fast. There are 4 countries that have reported cases in neighboring countries of DR Congo just in the past couple of weeks. So it's a new strain.
He just brings up more severe. All he's doing is bringing up nomenclature. There are 3 mechanisms that we need to worry about: the shutting down the innate immune system based on the E3 protein. All right, and that's shutting down PKR and OAS and RIG1 and MDA5, and shutting down the interferon in the cell. And the other mechanism that I mentioned before is that it prevents the activation of the CD4, the cognated CD4s and the CD8s to the infected cell. And then the fusion protein, the fusion mechanism, the proteins or protein that is involved in the fusion of the virus to the cell. He didn't even mention that.
Clade 1, original one, but we have to really look on being ready, and that's why we are calling really to this international cooperation. We are triggering mechanisms for procurement of vaccines, and we are really making the same countries say, look, be on a lookout, so we can collectively stop transmission chains.
Can and should people?
Paper India follows the story of a man who gives a woman a cup of tea on the house, a kind gesture to cheer her up, and then the negative fallout of that kind gesture. I was very.
Can and should people take measures at an individual level, like we did during COVID?
So this is very different virus. This virus is not spread through droplets and aerosols. It's spread through skin-to-skin contact. So I think what is important that countries, health systems, first of all, are strong enough to be able to.
He didn't say it. You won't going to hear him say this, but you need to pay attention. You can get pox in your mouth. If you have active infection in your mouth and there's droplets, and you get those droplets on your skin, that's how it gets transmitted. All right. Just go back to the days of chickenpox. People had chickenpox in their mouth.
To monitor and to see if there are any possible cases. If there are people with the symptoms, and symptoms are quite visible for mpox. It's a skin rash, it's a lesion on faces, on face, on genitalia. If people come with those symptoms, they should be immediately tested, and then basically
it's going to be on all your body. It's going to be, if a bad case of it, it's going to be in your ear because of, just, on your ear, or potentially even in your nose, could be in your mouth. It's going to be all over your body. It's going to be your torso, your face, your arms, your legs, everywhere. All right. Anywhere there is an epithelium that where it's close to the outside world. right? You have your skin, and then as it's moving inside your body, right, it becomes more of there's a mucosal barrier, right there, but you have this epithelium, right? That area, like cheeks, inside the cheek, or your gum line, or your tongue, or these things, they can get infected with pox. In your eye. He doesn't mention that. See, what I'm saying is that when they're interviewing, quote, experts, they're not telling you the full story, either because they're lazy or they're stupid, or both.
Support care and make sure that they don't have a close contact with other people. So in a way, we don't expect mpox to spread unless there are some mutations, obviously, we never know. But at this stage, pox viruses are spreading only through very close contact.
Can you define this very close contact for our viewers? What do I need to do to get infected?
You need to be next to someone.
What we have seen in a 22-23 outbreak, it was really primarily through sexual intercourse, and it was in a specific sexual networks, man having sex with man. But clade 1 is different. We see lots of children who are being infected by being in a close contact with their family members. So not necessarily
very similar to chickenpox. But again, chickenpox is herpes virus, different type of virus. But the mechanism, the similarity in the spread, right? You touch a surface, a piece of clothing that they touched, or bedding that they touched, or you touch their skin, or some droplets that happen to have active viral particles, right? Because of some sort of infection in their mouth. These are all problems where it can spread. Kids in a school during, the chickenpox days, when you remember, understand how fast this can spread. It's the same kind of thing, even though it's a different virus. A pox virus is different than a herpes virus. There's many different types of herpes viruses. But it's similar, right? It has a similar dynamic, social dynamic in how it spreads.
Sexual route, but just a skin-to-skin contact. So it's really just, again, from the public health perspective, most of these pathogens should be looked at in the same way. We need to know where the virus is, and we need to know who is infected, and then basically make sure that this person does not infect others. And for that, we need strong surveillance, we need strong laboratory equipment.
Patriot Act.
And having a health workforce who can help. And at the individual level, people should just follow the advice of their health authorities. And really, the most important thing is we know where the virus is. And this is what Sweden done yesterday, being very quick in detecting the case, making sure that that person is taken care of, and making sure that there is no onward transmission.
Okay.
That's how we can show it.
Reduce inflammation. Bring down those reactive oxygen species so there's less cellular stress. Neutralize pathogens. Really important as pillars to boost up your immune system. Another thing that you should be taking every day is vitamin D3. It'll obviously help you with absorbing calcium. But during this little issue that we have, you're going to have cells potentially that get infected if you have it. And D3 helps to get rid of infected cells through apoptosis. It is a gene expression cofactor. You need vitamin D3. Take it every day. So if your cells are infected, it gives it a little bit extra push to try to get those cells to go through apoptosis. Now, remember what I said with the mechanism. The E3 protein within mpox tries to shut down the apoptotic pathway, all right, by neutralizing PKR, by inhibiting PKR, all right, and all these other downward stream pathways, OSA, MDA5, RIG1, all right? You got to really pay attention here, all right? And because it inhibits PKR, it can't go, the cell can't go into antiviral mode and warn the other cells that there's a virus around. So it's shutting down the innate immune system, and it prevents the cell from going into apoptosis. It tries to stop the CD4s and the CD8s from killing off the cell, right? That's infected with that other mechanism that I told you about. So you need to boost up your immune system so when it does potentially get infected, that you have at least a better chance of fighting. All right. There's no magic bullet here. There is no, let me repeat, there is no magic bullet. But you have to boost up your immune system so it won't be as severe. Or you try to, you're mitigating your risks. All right. Vitamin D3 will help to get rid of infected cells. It helps with the apoptosis. And you're trying to counteract what the mpox is trying to do in shutting down the apoptotic pathway.
There with the World Health Organization in Geneva. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Eric Feigl was an American public health scientist, epidemiologist.
Another dipshit that doesn't know anything. Now remember, there's lots of people because of their diet in the United States and maybe even in Europe that they're eating fast foods, they're eating processed foods, they have a high caloric intake, they're eating sugary foods. It causes a disruption in the gut biome. And that disruption in the gut biome creates an inflammatory response. And that inflammatory response, if chronic, can lead to further disease, all right? But when you have a chronic inflamed GI tract, the lining of your gut is perturbed. And that means that it has a higher chance of having pathogens to get into your system. Because you have a mucosal barrier, you have a mucus lining, you have bacteria, you have a gut biome and bacterial lining within that mucus barrier. And you have your immunoglobulin A's. You have an immunity within that mucosal lining. But when that mucosal lining is disrupted because you have a bad gut biome for various reasons, then what happens is that the crypt, right? Your colon and your small intestine, your large intestine, your small intestine, they get inflamed. And so the barrier is thinner or non-existent. And so it's easy to transmit pathogens into your bloodstream or into your lymphatic system. So let's say that you ingest mpox and you have a really good mucosal lining for your oral cavity and your esophagus, and let's say even your stomach. But as it starts to travel down into an inflamed area in your GI tract, it gets into that inflamed area that has a weaker immune system, a weaker gut biome, that area is inflamed, that pathogen can get in easier. Now it's in your bloodstream, and then all of a sudden it starts to spread. Now do you understand why it's so important to maintain your body systems through proper diet, proper exercise, stop eating the crappy food, and how inflammation is a major doorway for infection? So get the probiotics, stop eating crappy food, stop eating processed food, stop eating sugary food, filter your water, reduce the inflammation in your gut, improve your gut biome so you have better metabolism, and that gut biome is going to improve the mucosal lining and improve that barrier between your food and what you ingest and the actual lining of your GI tract. Because if that barrier is small or non-existent, guess what? You start having problems like cancers and infections. So go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the powder probiotic that I have. I take this every day. All right. This will improve your gut biome and reduce that inflammation that I'm talking about. And if you don't want to take a powder form, I also have it in a veggie cap form. But this is really important. This is common sense. This is how you take charge of your health instead of listening to a bunch of dipshits.
Chief of the COVID Task Force and co-founder of the World Health Network. He joins me now from Washington. Eric, we heard the Red Cross there saying borders should not be closed. Why is this time any different than COVID?
Well, thank you for having me. Borders in itself is not the most effective way. Without testing, there's no point of closing any borders. The issue is that this monkeypox, mpox, has spread very, very quickly to countries that's never been affected. Even in Africa, they've never had mpox. And now
I'm gonna get to the chase here. All right, you're gonna need to boost up your immune system. Make sure you improve your lifestyle. Be prepared economically. Make sure that you have enough food and enough medications and whatever. Stock up. And the only way this is going to work is that you're going to have to be prepared, boost up the best that you can, your health, and just let the damn thing burn through the society. And there's going to be people that are going to be affected lifelong. Some will die, but that is the only solution. This is what I was saying in the early days, is that it's D-Day. You got to just take the hit. And through just pushing through, then what's going to happen is that the ones that do survive, there's going to be herd immunity through the natural infection. But you got to take the hit.
I think the Swedish case is just the tip of the iceberg, because we actually think it spreads much. This new version, don't ignore the previous version, this new version is much more contagious, and I think also much more severe, we believe, than previous mpoxes.
So speaking of this new version, which is dangerous enough for a global public health emergency, what sets it apart and how can people protect themselves?
Yeah, so there's several clades, several groups and variant groups. This is clade 1, which is, unlike clade 2, is much more severe. Not as severe as Ebola, but much more severe. And we think that because it has not been outside of Africa much, even in certain countries in Africa has never seen cases unlike this year. It's definitely, there's very few, background immunity against it. It's very different from past mpoxes. So past mpoxes in itself, we're not sure what is the relative immunity in protecting against this. And again, most of the world does not have vaccines against mpox, and most of the world is not vaccinated against smallpox either, which is a cousin virus. So we have to be very vigilant. This is almost like a new virus that the world has not seen before. And we know that if we let down our guard, what new viruses can do to the world.
Right. So is mass vaccinations the way to go then?
Yeah, theoretically. The issue is that there are 2 vaccines, but they are very limited in supply. The ramp up will probably take 6 to 8 months, we believe. And that assumes that, of course, that there's willingness to ramp up in mass purchase.
Let's trash our immune system even more, knowing that the mpox virus shuts down the CD4 cells. I mean, come on, man. This guy is an epidemiologist. See what I mean? This is the same problem that we had in 2020. A lot of, quote, experts not knowing anything.
Vaccine. So there are limited vaccines for these, but not at the global scale production to mass vaccination. So at this current time, we can't do mass vaccination. And, we'll see how bad this gets before we consider that.
In 2020, all the way into 2023, and some people also in 2024, taking S1, S2 subunits that happens to cleave, and that S1 subunit actually attaches to the TCR of the CD4 cells and makes them less functional. Let's just keep on doing that. So now we have a society that has a weakened immune system, so it's easier to contract stuff like mpox. AIDS-like syndrome.
Testing earlier, China wants to screen arrivals for mpox symptoms. Is this the way to go? Are such measures needed elsewhere?
So yeah, symptomatic screening, we don't really know if that's an all and be all. We know from COVID before that we used to do symptomatic screening, but we realized 50% approximately of all COVID transmission was due to asymptomatic. So symptomatic screening was what we did at the beginning until we realized it wasn't enough. And I think this mpox, the fact that it's dangerous, but it's not so severe that you're immediately symptomatic, that suggests that we could essentially see asymptomatic or low symptomatic, like basically confusingly symptomatic, where we don't know whether it's mpox or not. So I don't think that in itself will stop. I think screening and testing is very important, of course. We have to do more testing, and many doctors aren't testing yet. But I don't think screening based on mpox and
I just received a question, so I'm going to answer the question. They were asking about what if an adult never had chickenpox when they were a kid? All right. It doesn't matter in this case with mpox because there's no cross-reactivity. So that basically means that if you've had chickenpox or didn't have chickenpox, it's not going to help you. Mpox is coming, all right? And, you know, nobody has, most people, let me rephrase that. Most people don't have antibodies to fight mpox. The ones that have it are the ones that have been in a developing nation where there was probably an outbreak and they were given an inoculation, all right? Okay, they might have antibodies for it, cross-reactive antibodies. But the average person in the United States doesn't fall in that category. Same thing in Europe. The average person in Europe doesn't have that problem. It doesn't fall in that category. So they don't have antibodies. So everyone is susceptible to mpox. Now there are people that were Gen Xers and baby boomers, some Gen Xers, depending on when they were born, and depending on where they were born, there was a smallpox vaccination program. So like my parents, they had a smallpox vaccine. There are some people in developed countries where their smallpox vaccination program stops in 72 or 75. So if you were born after 72 or 75 in these countries, then you weren't given a smallpox vaccination, and therefore you don't have antibodies to be cross-reactive for mpox. Now, the problem is that even if you are that generation that did have smallpox vaccinations when you were young, the chances of the memory cells to kick in with mpox is diminished. So you may not, even if you had it, you may not have good cross-reactivity because your memory cells are so damn old. So the bottom line, if you had chickenpox or did not have chickenpox, it doesn't matter because chickenpox is a herpes virus. So it's not a pox virus. Secondly, older people that have had a smallpox vaccine that are still alive it may not be active anymore because the memory cells have died off or are such in low concentrations that it may not even respond fast enough.
Alone is enough to stop the virus.
Eric Feigilding in Washington. Thank you so much for that.
All right. Let's do another video so I can get upset. So, as the stress starts to build up, as you see the world, burning down because of war, destruction, the economy, the liberal agenda, whatever, you know what? You might as well smell nice, right? So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the citrus deodorant or the peppermint, lavender, and tea tree deodorant. It's for males and females. It's made from essential oils from the Himalayas, very high quality ingredients. All right, so you can smell nice, right? It's a great deodorant. Use it every day, right? Because people are going to be watching the news, and the world is increasing in its temperature, and you're going to get hot. So you might as well take a really high quality deodorant. In addition, this has no aluminum and no baking soda in it. It helps to detoxify your body, so it's a dual purpose product. So get a couple bars for your household. It's for males and females. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the deodorant, the citrus or the peppermint, lavender, and tea tree. Very high quality deodorants. In addition, Rainbow Herbals and I developed a product, a great product. It's a dual purpose product. It's a skincare product. All right. It's called the Even Better Bar. It's also made from essential oils from the Himalayas, all natural. All right. You apply it on your skin. It helps to smooth the skin. There's a glow to the skin. It makes the skin softer. So it's a daily skincare bar. If you have a cut or an abrasion or a minor burn, rub it on there and it will heal quicker. If you have a bug bite that's itching, put it on there and it'll stop the itch in 30 seconds. All right. If you pulled a muscle, rub it on the muscle, and in 60 seconds, maybe 120 seconds, maybe even 30 seconds, the pain is relieved, if not eliminated. All right. It's great if you're working out and you're sore. So it's a dual purpose product. It's a great product to help mitigate some of the problems with eczema and psoriasis. Rub it on there and you'll notice that it'll help. So please go to my store and get the Even Better Bar, because it's an all-purpose bar that has many purposes that you can use for your household. You have kids that are always scraping their knees or getting bug bites. You're going to need this. So get this and put this in your medicine cabinet. All right. So go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Even Better Bar. All right. What's going on? No!
I am proud to have Tim Waltz as my running mate, and today I'm asking you to please pitch in $5 to join our team.
Kamala and I believe in freedom. The freedom.
Well, moving on, the European Center for Disease Prevention and Control has raised its risk level for mpox. This a day after the global health officials confirmed the first infections with a new strain of the virus outside Africa in Sweden and Pakistan. The two strains of mpox are now spreading in Congo. The endemic form of the virus, called the Clade 1, and a new offshoot called Clade 1b. The ECDC has elevated risk level to moderate from low. More in our next report.
The World Health Organization has declared an outbreak of mpox a global health emergency, following a similar announcement by the Africa Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Here's what that means. The WHO also declared mpox an emergency 2 years ago, when a form of the disease began to spread globally, largely among men who have sex with men. That outbreak was brought under control in part due to vaccines. However, mpox, which spreads through close contact, has been a public health problem in parts of Africa for decades. Democratic Republic of Congo is experiencing its worst outbreak ever. 27,000 cases and more than 1,100 deaths since January 2023, largely among children. Two strains of the virus, which cause flu-like symptoms and pus-filled lesions, are now spreading in Congo, the endemic form, and a new offshoot. And it's this new form of mpox that has triggered global concern. That's because it seems to be spreading more quickly, and little is known about it. It moved from Congo to Rwanda, Uganda, Burundi, and Kenya, and then outside Africa's borders. The WHO has issued a public health emergency of international concern, the highest form of alert. That's done when diseases are spreading in new or unusual ways. The aim is to galvanize international cooperation and funding.
A coordinated international response is essential to stop these outbreaks and save lives.
Scientists hope efforts to get more medical tools and funding to Congo will be sped up to help tackle the outbreak and study the virus.
We do have a vaccine and we have a stock of vaccine. We are also discussing together with a lot of other European countries if we need more vaccine. But with that said, I think the most important thing is that more vaccines are directed into the area where we do have the large spread. I mean, it's much, much more important to try to decrease the spread in those countries and to decrease the risk of spread into other countries.
However, in 2022, a WHO appeal for $34 million to fight mpox got no take-up from donors. There was also huge inequity in who got access to vaccines. African countries did not receive the 2 shots used in the global outbreak, made by Bavarian Nordic and KM Biologics. 2 years later, that remains the case, though the WHO has appealed for donations from countries with stockpiles. The Africa CDC has said it has a plan to secure vaccines without elaborating, but stocks are currently limited. Mpox is a significant health problem that is killing some of the most vulnerable people in the world, including children. But it is not COVID-19. So far, there is no evidence that it spreads easily through the air like COVID. There are also proven tools to stop the spread and treat those most at risk. The challenge now, which the emergency declarations have aimed to highlight, is to make sure those tools reach those who need them most in Congo and its neighboring countries.
Oh, we already did that one.
Taylor Swift at Wembley Stadium, including the South London Swiftie.
All right, this is Bloomberg.
Bloomberg Audio Studios. Podcasts, radio, news.
A mutated strain of the highly contagious and potentially deadly mpox virus that started in the DRC has now spread to several African nations and infected thousands. The head of the World Health Organization now says potential spread of disease within Africa and beyond is, quote, very worrying.
Today, the emergency committee met and advised me that, in its view, the situation constitutes a public health emergency of international concern. I have accepted that advice.
More than 15,000 cases have been reported so far in the DRC, but at least 6 other African countries have seen cases, and Burundi, Kenya, Rwanda, and Uganda have reported their first ever mpox diagnoses.
We now have cross-border transmission, and the virus is now moving into countries where it hadn't been before. It seems to be almost all, or mostly, from human to human transmission.
On this episode of the Next Africa podcast, we'll ask how well the region is responding to the mpox outbreak and whether economies here can cope with another major health emergency.
The world cannot afford to turn a blind eye to this crisis.
I'm Jennifer.
Before we go to the audio here, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the digestive enzyme complex. This helps to break down lipids, carbs, carbohydrates, and proteins. It also has fibrinolytic enzymes in it. That means it helps to break up clots. All right. So this is important to help to digest, to improve your digestion. It also helps with reducing the load on your pancreas. So that's important when you get older. right? And again, this has fibrinolytic and proteolytic enzymes in it to help break down glycoproteins. Really important. Listen, break down glycoproteins, and it's fibrinolytic to prevent clotting. All right, break up the clots. So please go to the store and get the digestive enzyme complex. People need a focus. All right, to help you focus, get the clarity factor. All right, so you don't become sucked into, you know, the normal stupidity of the world. All right, this will reduce the brain fog. It'll allow you to focus. You can, for work or for school, even if you're retired, it's important because what this will do is help to get those neurons firing, maintain that neuroplasticity. If you're training your brain and learning new things, you're going to slow down the neurodegeneration, the normal aging neurodegeneration. All right, so this is part of an anti-aging process, right? We really need to start paying attention to our neural health. It's a major part to it. Unfortunately, my father has ischemic dementia. Basically means is that he had poor blood flow that affected his hippocampus, and now he's in a nursing home. All right, so we really have to pay attention to neural health. All right, on top of our pancreatic health and our heart health and our liver health and our gut health. You know, so all these different organ systems. Our brain is an organ system that we need to improve to the best of our ability. That means proper exercise, proper diet, stay away from sugary foods, right? Train your brain, read, write, talk to people, try to stay positive. It's hard, especially, you know, in the environment that we're living in right now. And have some mindfulness or spirituality. And all these things together will help you to slow down the aging process and boost up your immune system. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the clarity factor. It's part of a stacking and a protocol to improve your overall health. And in this case, this focuses on the neural health side of it, of the equation. It's really, it's hard to sleep, right? Because people are worried. We're going to be going through tumultuous times because of what's going on in Europe, what's going on in the Middle East, what's going on in Asia, potentially another pandemic. There's lots of problems that are on the horizon here. So some people can't sleep. It's really important to get good sleep to maintain good health, energy, boosting up your immune system. If you don't sleep properly, you're going to have a weakened immune system. You have toxins that start to build up if you don't sleep properly. So it's really important to sleep, all right? And get those 3 cycles of REM sleep and the deep sleep. So go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Good Night Formula. Why? Why? Because it has tryptophan and melatonin, and it'll help you get better sleep, reduce that toxic load, especially in the central nervous system. Vitamin C helps with the immune system and also helps with your skin health. Take this every day. If you're not feeling well, take a double dose of it. Drink it with some water. Make sure the water you drink is filtered. Vitamin B complex, really important for cellular metabolism. The first 5 B vitamins are super important for your mitochondria. And like I said before, the mitochondria are super important for ATP creation. And with that, you'll have a better immune system, better health of your tissue and your cells. Your brain needs a lot of ATP. So if you have diminished mitochondrial health in your neurons, that's bad. You want to boost that up. To help to boost that up, you take the vitamin B complex.
Saja, and this is the Next Africa podcast, bringing you one story each week from the continent, driving the future of global growth with the context only Bloomberg can provide. Janice Q has been following the developments very closely for Bloomberg News, and I'm delighted to say she's joining us now. Hi, Janice. It's been a busy week for you. Indeed. It's been quite a few big developments. Thanks so much for being here. Let's just start here because mpox, obviously, as your reporting notes, hit the headlines in 2022 when outbreaks were reported all over the world. What's different about this current outbreak we're seeing?
Africa got no vaccines back in 2022 and 2023, even though mpox is endemic in parts of the continent. And the strain that we are seeing now in this outbreak that is particularly concerning actually links to the endemic strain. It's an offshoot of the endemic strain, and that's called clade 1. And clade 1 is a more virulent version. And we are now seeing this mutated strain, and it's spreading. We've seen it emanating out of Central Africa, spread east, and scientists are scrambling to get enough data on what exactly is going on. Surveillance is fairly sketchy. It's a difficult area to work in, and there is evidence that it is like the outbreak in 2022 and 23, there is an element of sexual transmission, but it is transmitting and spreading well beyond that specific mode. So we've got the most number of cases in children, although it's spreading faster in sexual networks. And it's very difficult to get a grasp of because of the multiple modes. I asked the WHO when they made the announcements this week whether there was an airborne component, and they have no confirmed evidence that is the case, but they haven't ruled it out. They are looking at all possibilities at this stage.
Well, and could that potentially be why we're seeing it spread across borders as rapidly as it is?
It seems that the most likely pathway is still close contact. Across borders could well be, we've had a lot of roads built in Africa, and truckers moving across borders are known to be one way that this is transmitted. We've also got a lot of remote mining sites and camps housing hundreds of thousands of conflict-displaced Congolese, where once those roads are built, you get a quicker movement to cities, and it's people that really move these kind of viruses along. And as we've seen with other pandemics, we're all interconnected. It really probably takes a handful of people who've been working in these areas getting on a flight to other parts of the world, and things can move very quickly from there.
Janice, as someone who's covered the healthcare space for quite a while, what do you make of the reaction? Because it felt like it was sort of a light switch, and it went from really sort of teetering but behind the headlines to now it's the top story, really. Do you think governments are now taking it seriously?
So Africa certainly has been left behind before, and the Africa Centre for Disease Control and Prevention has acted this week as well as the WHO. They'll be coordinating things on behalf of the various governments. The NGOs have been calling out about this for months. At least 8 months ago, this particular strain was identified. But to be fair, since the WHO convened the panel last week, it's moved pretty quickly. Often a panel will sit for days, and yesterday they met for the first time, and in European time by the evening they'd already made the declaration. And Africa CDC declared a continent-wide version public health emergency the day before the WHO decided on calling the global version. It was the first time Africa CDC had declared an emergency since receiving this power from its member states last year. And the regional body has really made an effort to get into the driving seat this time around. The Director General of Africa CDC went so far this week in saying that Africa didn't get appropriate support in 2022 and 23, and what the continent is facing today is really a consequence of having no assistance.
And you mentioned that global health emergency that was declared on August 14th from the WHO. Give us some insight, Janice. What does this do?
So it prompts all the member states to report and improve surveillance. It helps release funds, so effectively marshalling resources. WHO this week in their briefing said that they are figuring out the details still, and we will get further details in the coming days. Hopefully, it will mean that countries in the West who have stockpiles, at least some of them do, from the 2022-23 outbreaks there, that they will share their vaccines. That all being said, it's not like the WHO can really force their member states to do a whole lot at this point, but it certainly gets attention and it creates space for talks to be happening so that these resources are used in the best possible way.
Stick with us, Janice. When we come back, we want to talk about what the impact of this outbreak could actually be based on some of the assessment that you were just giving us, and also whether there have been lessons learned from COVID. We're not so far off from that global health emergency. So we'll talk about that after the break. Welcome back. Today we're discussing.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. It's the-studio-reykjavik.com. Link is in the description of this video. Get the resveratrol. This helps to get rid of senescent cells. Senescent cells are cells that stop dividing because their telomeres get too small, but they won't go through apoptosis. So as you get older, you start to build up senescent cells because they divide up to the point where your telomeres get too short. All right. Well, senescent cells build up toxins, and this is and it builds up reactive oxygen species, and you age faster. All right. You want to get rid of those senescent cells. To help to get rid of senescent cells, take resveratrol. It's also an antioxidant, and it's synergistic with many other things that help to boost up your mitochondria. Really important, because what did I say? Mitochondria is important for ATP creation, and you need a lot of ATP for a robust immune system. So please go to my store and get the resveratrol. It is synergistic with C60, and it's synergistic with some other compounds, other supplements that I'm going to be releasing in a few days. So stay tuned for that. And go to my store and get the multivitamin. You need this multivitamin. Why? Because it's easy to digest, and you should be taking a multivitamin every day to help for your overall health and your daily routine. Multivitamins and minerals are cofactors for enzymes. If you don't have those cofactors, those enzymes aren't going to be as active and as robust as they should be. So to have a really robust metabolism and cellular health and tissue health, you need to have multivitamins. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Take a look at the vitamin profile that's on the back of the bottle. Take this multivitamin. It's easy to digest, and it's part of the overall protocol. So you should be taking this and taking all the other stuff that I've been telling you. That's really important. All right.
The mpox outbreak in the DRC, and also that hitting over countries across the continent. We have Janice Q, who's been following the story very closely. Janice, do we know yet what the economic impact of this potentially could be so far? Could it have a similar effect as COVID did to economies across the continent?
One of the lessons I think both the agencies, the Africa CDC and the WHO, learned from COVID was that as far as possible, it is preferable not to close borders. And so at this stage, both of them have said that they do not see a need for that. They are certainly upping surveillance at borders, but they do not want to cause the economic hardships that were caused by the reaction to COVID. The logistics are definitely tricky. The DRC, where most of the cases are at the moment, it's a very big country. As I said, there are a lot of displaced people. There are some very remote areas, but there's also a lot of stigma related to mpox. In the 2022-23 outbreak that was global, most of the cases were in sexual networks, predominantly men who have sex with men. And in parts of Africa, this is not just frowned upon. There are some countries where it can actually attract the death penalty. And so they are trying to, I think on the ground, many of the NGOs are trying to work with people, with communities to get rid of that stigma. In addition to that, there is a need to help people not to be suspicious of vaccinations and other measures that might be needed. So there is a lot of work to be done, and the WHO's Mike Ryan made it very clear in a recent briefing that the tide only turned on the previous outbreak, specifically in the US and Europe, when the most affected communities were properly engaged. And there is a lot of work to be done on that.
When you talk about vaccinations and skepticism around vaccinations, how might that play into a potential vaccination program that we do see with this strain?
Yeah, so vaccination programs are probably facing two main issues. The one is the logistics, which, as I said, is tricky in many of these countries because they are large countries and don't have a lot of infrastructure. They also have generally just very fragile health systems. Africa is arguably the continent that is most affected by global warming, and so the spread of other diseases like cholera and malaria have increased. We already know that sub-Saharan Africa has the world's highest number of HIV cases, and that is a comorbidity which has been highlighted as a big risk factor, both because people's immune systems are weaker if they have untreated HIV, but also because of the risk of somebody potentially harboring an mpox virus where they might not be notably ill the whole time, but the virus is sitting there latently and mutating. And so those risks are real. And I do think that beyond the logistics, as we've referred to, this community engagement, explaining to people that giving a child a vaccination is not because you are trying to put a tattoo on their arm effectively to say that they are going to be a victim of sexual violence, for example, but that this is just a smart way of ensuring that they are protected preemptively.
And it could potentially keep fatality rates from going up, right? Could that potentially have an impact then on what we actually see and people just getting very sick and not dying from it, essentially?
Yeah, I mean, the vaccines are pretty effective. They stem from smallpox vaccines, and all the pox viruses are in the same sort of family. And when we spoke to Bavarian Nordic, that is the company that provides or makes the main vaccine that's been approved so far, I asked whether with mutations they were confident that the vaccine would still be effective, and the answer was yes. Even one shot gives you about 80% protection, which is decent. The WHO and Africa CDC have gone on to say that as important as vaccines are, and as much as we need them on the ground in Africa, they aren't the only measure. Antivirals, when you're already sick, can help.
I just want to interject here. But the problem with the current method of production of these inoculations, I'm using the word inoculation because of censorship, right? So the production for these inoculations is harder than what Moderna is doing. So if my guess here is that if Europe and the United States ends up having outbreaks of clade 1B mpox, then emergency provisions are going to be provided to Moderna to speed clinical trials. They're already in clinical trial 1, right? And I already did a video on what they have 2 different ways of blocking mpox, right? It's a series of proteins that are mixed together in the inoculation, and so you're building antibodies against all these different proteins, all right? Now, my concern is that, well, now we got a lot of different mRNAs, right, in these inoculations, and that adds to the probability of genomic integration. So I'm not a fan of that type of technology. It's not, I think it's dangerous. I think it's dangerous, you know, especially when you speed through clinical trials. And obviously, you know, through the other things that have come up in the news about some of the side effects of it, I'm concerned. So, so just keep that in mind, that if the outbreak happens, there's another dynamic that's going to be happening, and that is emergency provision to Moderna.
And even there is evidence that something as simple as a decent disinfectant that you would use at home can main vaccine that's been approved so far. I asked whether with mutations they were confident that the vaccine would still be effective, and the answer was yes. Even one shot gives you about 80% protection, which is decent. The WHO and Africa CDC have gone on to say that as important as vaccines are, and as much as we need them on the ground in Africa, they aren't the only measure.
And people need to start. I did a gigantic set of videos about this. One shot means that, assuming that you didn't have an exposure prior, one shot means that you have an increase in your IgMs and a little bit of an increase in your IgGs, but you don't have really good class switching until the second shot. So if it's only one shot, that means that whatever protection you did have will wane relatively quickly. Usually it's a year, all right? And that to really get the most titers, that second shot has to be within about 4 weeks. to get that class switching. So if you're only doing one shot, you're not getting class switching. You're not getting long-term benefit. All right. That's just assuming that everything's safe, which probably isn't, but let's just say it is. All right. So she's saying, well, it's 80% effective. For how long? Because you didn't get class switching. See what I'm saying? Is that the population isn't smart enough to see the nuance. There's a nuance that's going on that people aren't paying attention to. So, here's a one shot. Oh, and then we have another outbreak 5 years later. Oh, here's another one shot. Oh, we have another outbreak 3 years later. Here's another one shot. So what happens is you never get to class switching and building up a reservoir of memory cells. And that's done on purpose. Why? They make more money that way.
Antivirals, when you're already sick, can help. And even there is evidence that something as simple as a decent disinfectant that you would use at home can kill this virus. Again, Mike Ryan from the WHO made this point that if we act quickly, we can contain this.
And so then, Jim, as I know, this is a fast-moving story as this virus is also spreading quite fast, but what is it that you're paying?
Improve your biological systems, the different organ systems, bring down chronic inflammation, take strong antioxidants, neutralize pathogens, maintain mucosal barriers in your oral cavity, in your GI tract, on your skin, right? Maintain a barrier there. Neutralize pathogens like structural nanosilver gels. That's a prophylaxis to slow down the chances of getting something. I'm telling you, I've been saying this for 4 years. 4 years. Can someone please start paying attention? And oh, by the way, we have a weakened immune system out there because of the 2020 crisis. So it's easier to get these types of poxes. So that's why it's so important to boost up your immune system. Oh, wait, let me.
Tangent to.
I always have to go on a tangent. Why do you think there's so many different turbo cancers now? The immune system is trashed. We have problems now with cells that have been perturbated genomically. We have inhibitors now of tumor suppressors. So you're inhibiting a tumor suppressor. When you inhibit a tumor suppressor, you end up getting cancers. You know, so you got a lot of problems. So it's really important to boost up your immune system. It's time to listen to me. If not, it's your own damn fault.
Next, whether that's from the WHO, the Africa CDC, I mean, what is it that we should be watching out for next?
When we start seeing sustained human-human transmission in countries where they've currently got just a handful of cases, that is something that we would need to pay attention to. Once it really settles into a community, it does make it harder to eradicate. And then, of course, any evidence that it is moving rapidly in other parts of the world. We really want to see the entire situation being handled differently. So what we saw with COVID and the previous mpox outbreak, I mean, quite frankly, I think we failed in both of those in the response. I think there have been lessons that have been learned. There are pathways for vaccination programs that could be tapped into again that were set up during COVID. And to echo what the Director General for Africa CDC said in his recent briefing, is that we want to make sure, first and foremost at this point, that every African is protected. Every person, whether you're in a city or a remote area, has access. And that is what we're aiming for. It would be very disheartening if we saw countries that already have stockpiles refusing to share, and countries that are less affluent not being able to get vaccines because of affordability issues. This is not something that I see as a fault of the manufacturing companies, they've got to still be able to be viable, and they have very Nordics already given a donation, but they can't donate all of theirs. Traditionally, the model with vaccinations is that the countries who can pay subsidize effectively those that can't. And in this case, the numbers aren't big enough, and countries that need it most are less likely to be able to afford the full price, which the Africa CDC has currently pegged at about $100 a dose. So we really do hope that we will see more sharing. We will see the community, international community, really figuring out a better way than what we've seen in other pandemics.
Yeah, especially when you factor in the economic situation for a lot of these countries. Janice Q, thank you so much for joining us and for your reporting on this. Really appreciate it.
All right. Please go to my store, bud-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the elderberry zinc lozenges. You're going to need these. Get a couple bags for your household. The cold season's coming, and it may be problematic. All right. The moment you're starting to feel something in your throat, you need to take a lozenge or the drops, the blueberry drops. This isn't a 100 count. And what that'll do is it'll create the secretions, neutralize that pathogen or antigen, and maintain that mucosal barrier. There was a theme: boost up your immune system, protect the mucosal lining. When you do that, you're improving your immune system. So please go to the store, get a couple bags of this for your household. I'm telling you, with this season in the United States for September, October, November, I think it's going to be problematic. I think, and we're going to be hit by a multitude of things. All right, and you just got to be prepared. You know, on all these different silos, like economically prepared, food supply prepared, supplement prepared, and just emotionally prepared. You have to boost up your immune system. Be prepared there. We're going through tumultuous times. That's really important to pay attention to what's going on. You can't put your head in the sand, because I'm telling you, times are changing. Please go to my store and get the C60. C60 is a very strong antioxidant, all right? It's a buckyball. It's a carbon molecule that is 60 carbons that looks like a soccer ball, right? It's a buckyball. And I have it in three different varieties. I have it in avocado oil, extra virgin olive oil, and MCT coconut oil. So I have it in a 2 ounce, a 4 ounce, and an 8 ounce configuration. You take a teaspoon of it a day, every day. All right. And what that will do is it'll soak up those free radicals. That buckyball is a small molecule, very potent molecule, and it has to be dissolved in a lipid, an oil. All right. And that's why it's in these different oils. So, and when you take it every day, you're going to start noticing that you don't have the same cellular stress because you're soaking up those free radicals. All right. And when you're doing that, it's also improving the mitochondrial health, and your ATP starts to increase. So the cell starts to heal, the cell starts to perform better, it has more energy. And then all of a sudden, because it has more ATP, other things in your tissues start to work better. In neurons, what will happen is you'll be able to produce neurotransmitters, and it will shoot those neurotransmitters better. Well, when you do that, it's strengthening your neural connections. All right. So when you're taking it every day, you're going to see this compound effect on how your cells and your tissues are improving over time, right? Compared to people that don't take it and they age quicker. And there's a point in time where when we turn about in our 30s, the number of cells that are starting to die are faster than the number of cells that are starting to be rejuvenated. All right, it's about age 30. So we start to slowly die faster than grow. All right. In our 20s or our teens, assuming that we're healthy, we are growing faster than dying. Right. So once you hit about 30, you start to reach this inflection point where you have more cells that are starting to die off, or accumulation of toxins and you start to age. And this is the reason why, age 30, you can kind of see a major change in someone's physical appearance and maybe even the overall health. There's another inflection point, assuming that someone's relatively healthy, doesn't have, some sort of genetic disorder. There's another point at about 65 where you age much quicker. All right, so it's not linear, it's exponential. So you hit 65 and there's the buildup of toxins, there's a lot of senescent cells, the reactive oxygen species really ramps up, and it's even more in the 70s. And if you get in the 80s, that you can even see it. You start seeing liver spots in your face and all these other things that are happening, right? Because of cellular stress, right? It's the buildup of toxins, and it's the reactive oxygen species start to go up. So it's really important to neutralize those free radicals early. The earlier, the better, all right? But start. If you haven't started already, start now and do it every day. So what you do is you just take a teaspoon of this a day, and it'll soak up those free radicals, right? And then the cells will perform better. They'll have better metabolism and better cellular processes. You'll have more ATP. You'll have a better immune system. You'll have, there's lots of things that will happen that your body is starting to allow to heal. And then there's a compound effect because you're soaking up those free radicals like when you were younger. So it's reducing the aging process. So it's a major component for slowing down aging and improving cellular performance, improving your tissue performance, improving your organ performance. All right. But it's synergistic with other antioxidants. And it's synergistic with other supplements such as resveratrol and clarity factor. I told you why, because the clarity factor helps with the neurons transmitting and focus. And this is improving the mitochondrial health and all. It's synergistic. Stacking is important. We can learn from the longevity experts and the anti-aging experts that preventative medicine can really boost up your health. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the C60. I take this every day, all right? Take a teaspoon of it. I have it in a 2 ounce, a 4 ounce, or an 8 ounce configuration. The higher the ounce, the cheaper per ounce it is. So you get a little bit of benefit if you buy it at the higher ounces. But please go to my store and use this. It's a major component to boost up your immune system, soak up those free radicals. You plug it with the other pillars like neutralizing pathogens and bringing down that inflammatory response, and you're going to be healthier. But you got to take charge. You got to make the choice that are you going to take charge of your health or not? I've told you everything you need to know. Everything you need to know. It's up to you to make the difference for your life. Now, if you don't want to pay attention, if something bad happens to you, it's your own damn fault. Thank you for listening. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Please share the links. Please ask your social media to follow me, because guess what? We're going to be going through some serious times. So you're going to need people like myself to be listening to on how to navigate it. And there's not too many people that are telling you like how I'm telling you. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Follow all my channels, all 7 channels. If you can, please donate. And please get the products that boost up your health. Thank you for listening, and have a nice day.